Now that we have the back of the torso complete, we're going to go ahead and come to the front of the torso, and we're going to start out with the most prominent muscle on the front, which is going to be the pectoralis muscle. Now, there's a few aspects of the pectoralis muscle that we want to be aware of. A major one is that the pectoralis muscle connects under the deltoid here and comes down and forward. So we're probably going to need to change our angle a little bit, or maybe sculpt this a bit better, but the connection here is actually going to tuck under the deltoid. So that's going to be something that we do want to be aware of. Another thing is that the pectoralis kind of has multiple connection points. It's going to connect up here from under the deltoid to the clavicle, like so. So it's going to have kind of a band that comes through here, but it's also going to have several striations that kind of overlap each other and connect into the sternum. And the sternum is kind of its own little area here, which is going to manifest in a bit of a divot in the chest. So we're going to have an indentation here. On top of that, there's also a triangular indentation, a bit like on the shoulder blade, right here between the clavicle, the deltoid, and the pectoralis. So that's going to be something that we're going to be looking for. So these are all features that we want to get blocked in here fairly early on so we know where we're going to be operating and how we need to connect things. So let's go ahead and get started here. We're going to start off with the damn standard BDS to get to that. And make sure you have X turned on if you're not. Windows did a lovely update and shut everything down for me. So yeah, I don't know what's functioning, what's not this morning, but we'll see. Remember I switched to 15 last time on intensity. That should save, assuming that you haven't closed ZBrush. I did not close ZBrush of my own free will. It was closed for me by Windows. So what I'm doing here is just kind of looking for that triangular indentation to begin with, which is going to fall right about there, going across there. And then we can connect the next head into the pectoralis, which is going to come from the deltoid here and come up to the other part of the clavicle. And then we're going to come from that same insertion point at the deltoid here down into the chest, and we can follow that line we carved previously, which I feel is a little bit strong, but that's okay. Make sure you get that angle there that it turns in at, and then we can come in here to where the sternum is at. So that'll give us a rough block-in of what this should look like, all right? Now, we want to think about the form of the pectoralis, in particular from the side. When we look at the pectoralis from the side, it has a bit of a volume to it and a bit of a lip. This is probably best seen in our existing 3D study here that we're referencing. The way the pectoralis goes is it comes down and it has a bit of a ledge, but an important thing to understand is it is flat running across here for the most part. A mistake a lot of students make, and a lot of artists in general, is they give it this sort of bulge here, and that's not how the pectoralis works. The pectoralis is largely flat running along here and curves under. And remember, this is an Écorché drawing, or an Écorché study. Where the fat goes that gives the bulk of this is basically on the under region here, under the pectoralis on the side. This is where we're going to see this in men, and it's also going to be where we see it in women. So with women, this area is still relatively flat. The breast comes out because it has the mammalian glands, right? And it lays to the side here of this area. So you have this sort of side volume in addition to the curve volume. But this area is relatively flat, not something to be aware of. So as we're bulking, we want to keep that in mind, that we want to keep this flat while we're adding a little bit of bulk to it. So let's go ahead and start bulking this using the clay buildup. And we'll take a look at the directionality the fibers run in here. Let's switch to BCB for clay buildup. And I'm going to start by addressing the pit area here the most, because this is going to be the area we want to kind of come off of. Now notice my intensity once again is too high because ZBrush reset. Remember, I'm working at around 5 intensity here. If you find 5 to be way too low, you could do something like 15, and I might do 15 to speed things up a little bit for us. But the first thing I like to do is kind of get a directionality going here, get a buildup to this muscle. And notice I'm not really going towards the center much. I'm kind of going towards the inside here, following the muscle striations, and stopping before I get to the clavicle. And that's because I want to build up the bulk across this area here. And you need to look at this in 3 dimensions, right? We should have sort of a square-ish looking muscle that's going to come down and around and into this area. And there's going to be a bit more meat towards the base here. I'm going to add a little bit more volume right there at that curve to where that pectoralis is going to curve in there. And I might want to give this a bit more love. And then as I come up here, I'm going to let this portion kind of be separate coming up into the clavicle, because you have the heads that connect into the clavicle and you have the heads that connect into the sternum with the pectoralis. And this line here that you're seeing, it actually does manifest itself on very fit or lean individuals. So that's something to be aware of, and why it's good to emphasize these separate heads. These do actually ripple too. They are individual heads that can be flexed. I don't think there's a whole lot of people who have the ability to do that, but you can potentially detail in each head of this muscle if you have a really buff or fit character, I guess you could say. Now I'm getting that issue that I mentioned where I'm kind of getting this to be too rounded. So down here is really where the bulk of this needs to be. And at this point, it's not really an issue of do I need more, because, you know, this thing's going to start to look female if I'm not careful here. It's really a matter of controlling what I have. So what I'm going to do is lower my resolution down to maybe 4 or even 3, 5, something, you know, relatively strong. I'm going to switch to BHP for the H polish brush, and I'm going to use the H polish brush relatively large here and aggressively to flatten out the chest and get this square angle that the chest has. Now, I want to be careful that I'm not flattening it out too much near the sternum. I could flatten it to have an angle coming off of the sternum, and that's just kind of going on the side here. You can see as I run this on the side, it's kind of giving me that curve, and that's what I'm looking for. But I'm looking for that flatness, and you can see I've achieved that now. The H polish, I don't know if I've explained it enough. It kind of flattens based on camera angle, and you could think of it, if you've ever done traditional sculpting, as kind of scraping. It allows us to scrape the clay in a certain direction, and really allows us to shape it. It's one of my favorite brushes. It's actually a hard surface brush, but I use it a lot for sculpting. So I'm just going to come along here and get that to look decent. And then on this underside here, I might give this a little bit of love just to kind of make this look less saggy and more chiseled. And you can see at this low resolution of detail how we're starting to get that pectoralis to read nicely. Coming along here, I'm just going to flatten out this area a little bit more, coming out of the deltoid. And then we can start working our way up in subdivision to see how this looks. And you'll see that's going to give us a better look to the pectoralis muscle. Now, we probably want to get some new striations in there, but that looks okay. I do want to compare the form to my reference, because the pectoralis is one of those tricky areas, especially when there's no landmarks. So I just want to see how it is pairing up next to this one here, especially from the front, and we can look at it from the side too. So let's place this here, because I feel like mine are maybe hanging a little bit low. We can use the see-through there. And you can see mine definitely are very low on the model. So I'm going to use the ZBrush BMV to come in here and adjust that. Now I might go a little bit lower here to maybe something like 4 or 5. I use lower resolutions because it gives us more control. The other thing I might want to do is mask the arm here, especially in the armpit region. If I control-click these, I can get rid of them, but I think using control and switching to the mask lasso and masking these is kind of a safer bet. We just have to be very careful we're not getting the important areas in there. So I'm just going to move this up with the move brush, relatively large move brush here, to be more in line with where the pectoralis is falling on my reference here, and just kind of try and match that shape a little bit better, because what I currently have is not really what I want. And you can see there's some things I'm losing there, like the thoracic arch. I'm just going to go in here with the dam standard and redefine that a little bit better. But that should give us a better look at where these are at and their relative size. So this is one of those areas that I always find a bit hard to get into here without using direct reference like this, because it's an area that's very easy to get wrong. So something like that will give us a better placement there for that along the body. And then now that we've moved that, we might need to come in here and adjust the volume from the side with the move brush and adjust some of these forms. You'll also notice that a lot of the forms down here are looking a little bit weird. We're going to get to those later, but I'm just going to add a little bit more volume back here since we kind of lost that, and I'll actually smooth down here. But we can come back up here for the pectoralis muscles again and continue working these a little bit now that we have a better idea of the volume they should take up. And I'm actually okay with them. I don't really see an issue at this point. I think my only issue is whether or not I feel they're looking good relative to this. And part of me wonders if my deltoids are maybe too large in comparison. And remember that it's a process of kind of adjusting everything as you go. The nice thing about having something like this we can follow, it allows us to kind of double check some of those things as we're working, and just keeps us honest. I think the head of the deltoid is just connecting a little bit too low here as part of the issue. Yeah. Also, the side of the deltoid, now that I'm looking at it, my deltoids come at too much of an angle based on their coloration. They should be coming out here, which will widen the pectoralis. And now we'll be getting a closer look. And that's feeling a bit better. So let's go ahead and just kind of do another bulking pass really lightly. Here I'm not looking for volume. I'm just kind of looking to maybe give a little bit more indication of the muscle striation here, how it's connecting, and also to kind of tie things together. I feel like this one's kind of lost its volume. It does have sort of a roundness around the middle, despite the flat aspect. So you can see how it's still maintaining that flat line, but we have the belly kind of going down here. I also might want to take a moment here to just kind of get the sternum area looking better. I'm going to go to a lower resolution and use the dam standard here to kind of make more of a furrow here that's even. And then use the H polish here to create more of a channel. And then just kind of use the H polish to slope these better so they're not just diving in at a super steep angle, because they kind of connect onto there. And it does take a bit to sculpt these muscles to really kind of study the form. But take your time with it, because that's the whole purpose of this thing. And you might find that you're doing a lot of back and forth like I am. That's fine. It's part of the process. No one said it would be quick and easy. All right. And the pectoralis is one of those areas I do like to work separately, but then occasionally work together. to try and get the correct look. So I think we're finally getting close to what I like. And once we get the other muscle groups in here, we'll probably have to come back and adjust these, simply because everything kind of relates to each other, right? So for example, we had to adjust the deltoids. I don't really like the angle these are coming out of here at. Let me check my reference really quick just to see if there is a reason for that. Well, no, that's about right. I think it's just defining who goes where. So I'm going to use the damn standard here to just kind of carve this head again, coming up into here. And then these ones here, they actually come up like this. So if I wanted to do the sort of multi-headed look, it kind of comes out and under there. And part of that's probably what I'm missing, is just kind of seeing that a little bit more clearly. But we don't want these individual striations like that necessarily to be seen. I think that's okay. I think I can live with this detailing. So have to be satisfied at some point, right? And this area underneath here is going to change a lot once we get into the thorax. Getting the thoracic arch kind of in there. All right, so something like that gives us an okay look at the pectoralis there. This is where looking at this with a different material might also be nice. You know, the basic material here. I know I set up nice lighting. It all got lost when Windows did its update, so let me just set the lighting to be quick here. There we go. So something like that, you can see, kind of shows us the pectoralis nicely. So I think we're going to call it good here for the pectoralis. We might revisit this to give this a little bit more detail. As with our previous sections, we can give this some sort of coloration to kind of separate it out from the rest of the torso. I'm going to switch to RGB, and we'll just make this section kind of a bluish green. I don't think we've really used that yet. And we can color this in. So the area the pectoralis is going to take up is going to be around here, and remember those key important details that it's going to connect both into the sternum, which is the center of your rib cage there, and it is also going to connect into the clavicle here, which is that lovely little bone you have on your neck, and you're going to have that indentation there. And just to be consistent, I'll go ahead and make the triangular indentations essentially the same color here, just kind of painting them in with this reddish color. And this is an area we could actually give a little bit more detail if I go back to the clay buildup and switch to Z add. And I'm technically going to Z sub here. I'm holding Alt to remove. I prefer just using Alt to transfer between the two. We could also use the damn standard here to just kind of nudge this in and make this more of an indentation, and then BHP to just kind of smoothen out that indentation a little bit there. So that way we get a nice look. All right, so that'll give us the pectoralis muscle in place. Let's go ahead and save. I may want to make this just a smidge more square than it currently is, though. I think that would be a move brush job. Just one of those things that makes it feel a little bit more proper. So I'm going to switch to BMV for the move brush. and kind of come down here to maybe something like 4 or 3. And with a large move brush, what I want to do is kind of angle this more and get more of a curve to it right around the base here. And maybe pull this out a little bit more to have more of a ledge to it than it currently has. So what I'm essentially looking to get at is this angle here of it turning, because that's one of those key features that makes the pectoralis a pectoralis. You don't want it to just kind of round the corner. You want it to have a bit of a squareness to it. And the move brush is a nice brush to kind of help us get that in there. Just kind of moving what we have around. And I do it at a low angle or a low resolution because it's easier to push and pull without losing detail. So just be aware of that. I'm going to make this curve in slightly here. And that should be a bit better. All right. I'm still not 100% sold on it, but we'll go with it. I'm trying to think of why I'm not 100% sold on it. I do feel like it needs to come down a bit more. Okay, well, we can check it against our reference once more, maybe zoomed in a bit better this time, and then adjust the form just to see if maybe there is something we are missing. And having it zoomed out to have a full reference of the body is good, but having it zoomed in is sometimes better because we can see the details up close and see if there's something we're missing. So it seems I may have nudged it too far. Okay. One of the nice things about the coloration here is it makes it so you can kind of see this a little bit better when it comes to comparing. All right, I think the next thing to do is kind of move forward and get the surroundings done, but I'm going to hit this with the dam standard once more, kind of carve up and over here, just to kind of get a better separation going of there and the next muscle group. That'll be a good start, and then maybe, just maybe, a little bit more touch up here to bring the volume back in there. So we're maintaining the roundness there around that area. And remember, it's a hard balance because we want it to be round because it's live. We want to make sure it has the belly, but we also don't want it to go round from this view. We want it to have that flat aspect. All right. The next thing we want to do is define the clavicle bone better. You can see we're kind of losing it a little bit here. Where we see the clavicle bone going is basically from here to here and then turning in the front here. Now, a great brush for this is the Ram brush. If you've closed ZBrush out and you don't remember where that's at, so it's going to be up here in the light box, and we're going to go into the brush tab here, and we can go into Ram. And then we'll go ahead and open this up. We can select the Ram brush here. Now, with this, I might hide the head, just Control-Shift-Alt, and come to the top here. And the top view can be very useful because we can get a better indication of where this goes. So the clavicle is going to come onto the deltoid a bit, turn forward at an angle, and then turn to the side. So we want to do this at a lower resolution. So I'm going to do this maybe around 4, I think probably has the right resolution, or 5. We're going to use Alt to see what we're doing. And essentially, we're going to have a relatively small brush size. That gives us the size of the bone. And we're going to go in an S curve. So think about how an S goes. It goes like this, right? So basically, one head is here. Then we have one across the body, and then we have one kind of turning in. And I don't know if I'm doing the best job of getting that to look correct here. So give me just a moment. There, and then here. So something like that is going to get us that clavicle bone a little bit more well-defined. But I want to do that smoothly, like so, to get a better look in that. We can then use Shift to kind of just smooth out the corners there and just have that elevated ridge. And that's going to be what we want to do to kind of emphasize that clavicle a little bit better. The skin does roll over the top, so we don't want to spend a whole lot of time trying to define it and make it really clearly seen. But having that ridge there is going to help us out later, especially when we get into the neck connections. All right, so now we can move down and we can adjust the thoracic arch beneath the pectoralis. We can use a lot of different things here to achieve this. This is going to be this area right underneath here, if you remember. I'm going to go to the dam standard here and just kind of get the thoracic arch detailed in here. If we want at this stage, it might not be a bad idea to take a look at our reference here a little bit more for the torso and just kind of spend a moment here getting the line work to be in a similar fashion, since we know we're kind of matching this. And I'll lower this down and use the dam standard to kind of carve in where the arch is happening on our reference. And this is where, you know, our poly count's getting pretty stretched here. I'm actually kind of surprised we're getting so stretched towards the middle. we had a lot of polygons there. So, but what we want to do here is just kind of get this to look a little bit nicer underneath the chest here. And we're going to think of this as a form. Now, this is going to be part of the rectus abdominis at the end of the day. So we are going to work our way into there. I just want to take a moment here to get this a little bit cleaner and not so gross looking. So I'm going to start off by just kind of doing some form sculpting here, where I bring in some clay buildup here and even this out. So that way we have enough to work with in this area. And then I'm going to use the H polish here, BHP, to just kind of work this area to be flat. Now, let's say you don't want to mess up your pectoralis. You like where these are at. You can mask those. So I could hold down Control. And even with the lasso here, I can kind of trace this area closely. I think it'd be better to switch to the mask pen, though. So that way I could come in here and just Control Paint and make sure I'm getting just what I want and nothing else. So now with the H polish, I can come in here and just kind of aggressively flatten this. And you can see now I can control how it is looking in relationship to the pectoralis. So rather than sticking out like a nose like it was, we can have this as a nice flat runoff area here, running down into here. And this is going to set us up nicely to deal with things like the abs and other areas as we move forward. So just kind of a little bit of detailing there. And I could even smooth some of this out because we are going to be sculpting on top. But that way we get that segmentation there that we're looking for. Now let's go ahead and just kind of work this chest area a little bit better. I'm going to switch to my select lasso here and Control-Shift-Alt and remove the arms. I might even just Control-Shift-Click the body here to isolate it, so we don't have the arms at all. And just take a look at this thoracic region here. I'm going to get this set up so we can move forward with the rest of the muscles on it. I'm going to use the dam standard here to just kind of carve under and define this area a little bit better. And just like we did with this upper region, just take some time here to shape this using the H polish. And I want to go a little bit lower than the subdivision level I'm on. But just get this to have a nice polish to it. We're going to want this to emerge from back here, from underneath the latissimus dorsi. And remember, there's going to be a handful of muscles that sit on top of here. This is just a structure that the muscles sit on top of. Here I'm using the dam standard, but holding Alt to kind of maintain the ledge of the rib cage. So remember, that's what the thoracic arch is showing us, is essentially the rib cage. And that should get us set up to add in the next muscle group, which is actually going to be underneath the arm. And that is going to be the serratus muscle. And it's going to interact with the muscles on the thorax. So let's go ahead and isolate this. The serratus muscle is on the side here. It's a serrated muscle. And if you recall back to our diagram here, the serratus muscle is this one, these serrated ones inserting underneath here from underneath the latissimus dorsi. So we're going to take a moment to get those into here and get a nice look to those. Its name indicates how it serrates with the rib cage, so that's going to be what forms the structure. And we can start by lightly indicating the ribs before we add in the muscles to emphasize the form of the skeleton and how they take. So let's go ahead and play around with that a little bit. There's going to be about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teeth of the serratus muscle visible, and they're going to be coming out of this curved lump here. So this area here, that extra volume we added to the latissimus dorsi is basically representing the serratus muscle location. Now, in terms of the rib cage, you know, the ribs are going to kind of come along here and down and be running at the side of the body. That's going to be what is essentially in this area, right, is our ribs. And the serratus muscle is going to connect onto these. Now, in terms of the heads of the serratus, we can kind of carve these in with the dam standard. We're going to have one running sort of under the pectoralis, and then these are going to serrate into the ribs one after another, kind of receding as they go. So we'll have about 5 of these coming down. They have a line kind of running diagonally this way, and they serrate with the ribs out this way. All right, so that's going to be the serratus muscle. So once again, we want to get in about 5 of those. So just reduce it down. We're at 1, 2, 3, 4. This one will be the last one next. And that's going to essentially give us where the serratus muscle is going to be located. Now, the serratus muscle emerges out from under the latissimus dorsi. So as I build this up, I'm going to bring this under the latissimus dorsi here, and we're going to have to work that latissimus dorsi to basically be going over these. And then each of these has sort of its own volume, its own head, and own belly, if that makes sense. These aren't really a really big muscle. The serratus muscle was one of those muscles I mentioned that is only visible on very fit individuals, very lean individuals. It tends not to be visible on a vast majority of people. So this is one of those muscles that is very subtle, that goes into that area there. And I feel like mine are looking a bit curved for some reason. They should be straighter than how I have depicted them, I feel like. So we might need to do a little bit of back and forth to get that looking correct. Let me use the move brush here, BMV, because these insert directly into the ribs here. So we shouldn't see this curve that I have going to them. As a matter of fact, I'm going to backpedal here and redraw these to be better. I don't know why I made them so curved. All right, back to the drawing board. So I drew my ribs and then totally forgot how muscles work. So we're going to be going relatively straight here. And I'm actually just going to remove my indication of ribs because I feel like they are what's throwing me off more. But that's going to essentially connect down into the rib there. I think my placement of elements in general might be what's throwing me off, but we'll go forward with that. Let me just check my reference again. Yeah. And come at an angle. And then we can come forward again, come at an angle, come forward again, come at an angle, come forward again, come at an angle, and then forward again, and come at an angle. Okay, I think that's going to give me a better feel for the serratus than what I had originally. I think this one comes out a little bit further. But that is going to be what we're looking for, and it's going to serrate there with the other muscle. I'm going to just come to the latissimus dorsi here and give it a little bit more of a ledge here, and we're going to have to kind of work these together. But now we can start building these up, and this will give us more what we're looking for here in terms of this structure. Now, we don't really have enough polygons for this, which is kind of interesting, but just kind of do your best with it here. Apparently, I should have divided this one more time to a really high division. I might need to come to a slightly higher subdivision here to 7. And I think at 7, we have enough here to kind of work this form. Like I mentioned, this is a pretty subtle form that is not visible in a vast majority of people. So it mainly just manifests itself as giving a little bit of bulk to the latissimus dorsi from the front view. Generally is how we see that area. So that's going to be the serratus area. So let's go ahead and just kind of continue working this and making sure it looks correct. I feel like the belly of this one's a little bit off. The belly of these should be more towards the midsection. And part of that's because I feel like my thorax region got a little bit wonky when I redid this. So I will probably be reworking the heads of this as we go. It's also kind of weird because the armpit is in this area. But we want the volume of these to be kind of towards the back. The belly comes out from the latissimus dorsi. And I'm actually going to run the smooth across these really quick. to try and get a better read on what's wrong with them. I'm going to use the H polish across these at a lower level to kind of give them the volume they need and directionality. So I might even come in here with something like the clay buildup at a low level here to try and get these to be a little bit more level with the latissimus dorsi there. So I'm just using the clay buildup to bring that up. And then the H polish I'm going to use here to get the angle. And they have sort of this ledge to them. So you can see the structure I'm creating here. This is kind of how these sit on the form. That's going to be what I'm kind of aiming for. So sometimes I like to come down to a lower level and get the primary form looking good so I can come back up and get the secondary forms and the tertiary forms looking better with some of these muscle groups. And this would be one of them. It's one of those relatively abstract groups. So it can be nice to take a step back and make look nice. And that's looking much better. All right, so that's going to be the serratus muscle on the side there. I think we got it. Cool. Now I'm just going to add in the striations now. Clay buildup. Very light amount of striations here. This is where I might take my Z intensity all the way down to like 10 or 5 or lower. So that way I'm not blowing this out. And just kind of nudge these back into here. And the serratus muscle, once again, is going to tuck under the latissimus dorsi. So if I want to, I can come in here with the latissimus dorsi and just kind of give a little bit more emphasis to the side ledge, especially now that I've sculpted these, and get this to look like it's running over the top of those, because it is. That's going to be how that relates to that muscle area. And like I mentioned, this bulk back here we put behind the latissimus dorsi, this ledge, remember we did those indents. This is the serratus muscle kind of sitting inside of here, going into the ribs, along with some of those muscles in the shoulder. So there we go. That is going to be where the serratus muscle is located. A little bit tricky to get in there. Now we can go ahead and give that one some color indication before we move forward, so you guys can really see it as we progress. Let's give this a bit of a purple. I'll just switch to RGB, and we can somewhat carefully come in here and color the serratus muscle so that we can see that individual muscle group on the torso here. All right, cool. So there we go. That will get that serratus set up for us to visualize. Now, we're probably going to be working that a bit more as we go with the muscle group around it. We're going to move to the abs and define the thoracic arch better and the linea alba. So that's all going to be stuff that ties into this. So let's go ahead and get started on that. You might want to save another iteration first. Okay, so before we move forward, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the stuff on the abs. Just to review, this here is going to be that thoracic arch that we're talking about. Then running down from here is the linea alba, the white line. So those are going to be two forms that we want to get in, and we want to define with the dam standard early on. But there are some forms we want to look at, which is the individual shapes of the abs. They're not so well seen here. We might need to use a different anatomy chart. Maybe even our anatomy drawing would be a better one for this. So taking a look at this, when we look at the abs, we often talk about a 6-pack, but they're actually an 8-pack. On top of the thoracic arch is this one here. This is just so thin, it sits along the bone and we don't really notice it as much. But you can see people who do have an 8-pack who are like really lean or really buff, maybe on steroids or something. And that would be this top muscle coming in. Now, the next muscle is somewhat of a triangular shape. It's not really that well seen here, but this one tends to be a bit of a triangular shape on the belly. And underneath that, the next one's a bit more square. And I actually have too many going on here, which is interesting. I have to go back and review my anatomy drawing. I feel like these two kind of meld together up here is what I'm missing. These ones here, those tend to meld into the same form as it moves down. And then as we get down into this one here, this is actually a bit of a heart shape, which is kind of interesting towards the base here. And my placement on this one's pretty atrocious, but that's going to form a bit of a heart shape. So those are going to be some things that we can see in here. So let's go ahead and get some of these things kind of in here and defined a little bit better. Let's go ahead and start out with the linea alba and just the ab line in general. I am going to bring this in here so I can see this a little bit better and square this up so I can see the linea alba line, because I feel like our existing one here is way too narrow. And I am correct. I'm going to use the dam standard here and just kind of carve in this new line here for the linea alba and just kind of push in the thoracic arch a little bit better. We can trace the abs while we're here if we want to kind of get an indication. So there's a center line running down the middle, and then we have the triangular one here, which kind of naturally forms a triangle due to the thoracic arch shape. We have a square one underneath it, and then the last one's going to be that heart-shaped one. So we're going to get something like this. Mine is very messy because we put the linea alba line in the incorrect spot initially when we did this. That's okay, though. But this last one here is going to be that one that's a bit more heart-shaped in nature and kind of comes down along the linea alba. And this one's going to be square. And then this top one's going to be more triangular. So that's going to give us a rough indication of the abs. And as you might have guessed, we have a lot of work to do with these. So yeah, we're going to start getting those in there and adding the detail over the top of these. Now, it's important to understand the shape of the abs from the side. They are not flat. They form this sort of relationship here where they are a ledge. And then if we're thinking in 3 dimensions, this comes back like this for the thoracic arch. And then this is going to kind of round out here going back for the externo oblique. So we do have this area where the abs are sticking out, and we should actually already be seeing that for the most part here, which is good. But one thing I might want to emphasize here with the dam standard is kind of that slope a little bit better. So let's go ahead and start working these muscle groups into here for the rectus abdominis and just getting some detail going. So I'm going to switch to clay buildup, make sure we go back to Z-add, and take some time here to just kind of give these a bit of bulk. The belly of each of these runs across the midsection of it, so that's what we should be seeing. Looks like we're already kind of there on that one. And I am going to use the H polish to kind of shape these up and get them looking a bit nicer. I might also introduce the pinch brush as well to get them closer together so they're not sitting so in here. While I'm at it, I'm going to add the very top one here to the abs and just kind of work our way across here and down, just kind of giving them the volume they need. And we can always dam standard back out as we need to change their shape and volume. So kind of take your time with it. And everyone's are going to be different at this stage in terms of how much work needs to be done. So just be mindful of that. These are also relatively flat from the side. So what I might do is think of the primary volume here as a whole, rather than the individual segments of these muscles, how this is going to look from the side there, how it's going to look coming off of the chest, and work this shape, and then come in and add in the individual divisions. So I'm going to use the H polish at this stage to come in here and get this looking better. I'm going to go down to something like a subdivision 4. And you can see I'm kind of looking at it from the top down. So the belly kind of slopes down there. And then come into the sides here and just kind of square out that volume. Then running along the midsection here, kind of make it a little bit more rounded and barrel-shaped. And just kind of work this volume to be the volume of the rectus abdominis, rather than the muscle detail of the rectus abdominis, because I think that's where we need to begin. And I think that looks good. And now I can work my way up into here, and you'll see we actually kept some of our indications of detail. I'm going to switch back to the damn standard, BBS, and just kind of, with a smaller brush here, carve in the individual abs, so this way we can see them better and get a better shape to them. So that first one's sort of triangulated. Second one here is more squared. And then lastly, we end up with the heart-shaped one down here. That kind of comes down and around and has the division that the belly button sits in. And then the belly button's going to sit right there. We don't need to worry about that for now, but that's going to be relatively close to what we're looking for. And give us the structure that we're looking for. So a little bit of a ledge towards the outside. I might want to indicate that, and then indicate that coming down a little bit better. And we're not going to worry about the groin too much here. We can get to that as we move into the legs and other areas, but for now, we just want to get those abs right. Now, this top one I'm not too worried about right now. We kind of got that looking good when we did the thoracic region. It shouldn't have an indentation. It should still have a bit of a belly to it, but this is going to come in a little bit more when we start to do the external oblique. I do want to check this with my reference really quick just to see how it is panning out, but this is going to be one of those areas that we do revisit when we do the surrounding muscles. So just kind of taking a look at this here. One thing I'm noticing is my body's maybe a little bit too narrow at the thoracic region. So I can isolate my torso here, clear my mask, and come to a lower subdivision, maybe 4 or 5, and just kind of look through here and use the move brush on the outside a little bit to broaden this. And then when it comes to the abs, I want to be able to see these. It looks like we're following this fairly closely, but they do widen here on my reference. And that's something I'm kind of missing, is sort of a widening there, which I think would help that read. And then as far as this goes here, the thoracic arch region is pretty close. I think ours is a little bit too narrow compared to this. We could also take a look at this from the side view. I think the side view is actually looking pretty promising in terms of our placement of things, so I'm not too worried about that. I think we did a fairly good job bulking out the stomach. The one area that isn't as far out here is the thoracic arch, and I think that's part of it. We're getting a bit of a sunken chest to this, so I'm going to bring out the thoracic arch here and define the rib cage better. So we're getting a better look to that. And as far as our stomach goes, I think it's looking decent. So that will give us a better read on that. And we should still have that thoracic region in there. So that looks good. That will give us the rectus abdominis. So for these guys, let's give them a quick color over. I'm going to switch into a bluish color here. We'll go ahead and do a brighter blue than we did above. Maybe something like cyan, and we can indicate the rectus abdominis with this. And just kind of paint in this area where these are going to be located. So that way you can see that muscle group and the structure it is going to have. All right, so now that we have got the abs set up, what we need to look at is we need to look at the external oblique. So we already looked at how the abs are not flat from the side, and looks like I need to do a better paint job because my brain thought they were flat from the front. So we have a nice curve going to there, but the external oblique is going to be sitting inside of there. So this is the final muscle of the torso that we are going to be putting into here. In order to see this, I'm going to have to hide the arm and not part of the serratus muscle, if I can avoid it. So the external oblique has a downward angle coming over the pelvis that we're going to want to get. It serrates with the serratus muscle, so it's going to be coming kind of at an angle here into the serratus, heading towards the abs. It comes along the abs over the thoracic arch, so it's going to be along this arch area here. And it slopes off the ribcage over the pelvis, creating an hourglass shape of the torso. From the backside, it makes a triangular indentation as well with the latissimus dorsi. So we have a lot going on with this muscle. So let's go ahead and get started trying to get this in here the best we can, because it is a pretty big one to get in. So one of the first things I want to do is really kind of define where this is going to be going in terms of its relationship to the body. So this comes out of here, out of the latissimus dorsi, and comes over here, which is our pelvis. I'm going to start by defining our pelvis a little bit better right along here, and I might even carve in a bit of that polycleton area, polycleton fold. Coming along the backside here, I'm just going to bring that forward. And then as this comes back here into the gluteus, I'm using the dam standard once again to define this. That's going to be that triangular indentation that it creates right around there in terms of its relationship. So as it turns away here, essentially, it's going to be where we're seeing that. So I'm going to use the clay buildup here to nudge this inward. Turn off RGB because that's what it's currently set to. And get that form to be more well-defined there. And let me just make sure that's the correct elevation. Yeah, that should be good. Coming off the backside of the pelvis. It's kind of where the pelvis turns away that we see that. And I'm just going to smooth that out because that area is not all that important to have right now, because we are going to get the glutes later. And this is going to come forward. Now, it's going to slope over here on the torso to kind of give us the effect we're going for. So this is going to be one of those muscles we do a lot of work on. But let's get started. So with the clay buildup, I'm going to start by taking a look at where this runs. And it's basically going to run from the abs back. Now, I'm going to hold down Alt here to kind of just prep the abs for this. It's good to have sort of a slope on the abs here. You don't want to have an indentation. You just want to have a nice smooth surface, because essentially what's happening with this muscle is it is going back here like this, and then it is going to aim up towards the serratus and kind of come down from the serratus muscle. So basically this is kind of the directionality that this muscle is going to be running for the external oblique. And it's going to come all along here, all along the thoracic arch, and next to the rectus abdominis, interacting with the serratus muscle and kind of flowing over the thoracic arch and the torso to give our torso its key shape. It has a bit of volume at the base here that forms the premise of sort of the love handles. The love handles is a combination of the external oblique paired with fat. So this is going to be one of those things where the move brush is going to be our best friend in a second here. And I might actually get started with that now. I'm not going to do a good job of getting this in here without using my reference pretty heavily. So yeah, that'll give us a start point. But at this stage, I'm going to lean onto my reference here so we can get a better visual on this and the shape it is creating. So this is going to be the rest of the torso silhouette here. use my see-through here, and I'm going to reduce down to probably about 5 or 4, since that's been working fairly well for this. Square this up better, and we can start to see the area that this is going to be taking up. So I am going to take a bit of time here to move my torso elements into place to kind of match here. I'm going to use the BMV to get to the move brush, and I'm going to move the serratus muscle into place, and then you can see there's this tuck and this pull here that forms that hourglass shape. That's going to be what I'm trying to capture here a little bit more, because mine's kind of going flat on me. And from the looks of this, assuming I have this scaled correctly, the serratus muscle needs to be a lot wider than I currently have it. And I think that is correct, because it needs to sit on top of the chest barrel better. So that's something I need to get looking better there. Now I'm going to move to the side view, and I can't really see it from the side view too much here, but I do know how these are supposed to interact, and this needs to come back more here, because the latissimus dorsi kind of sits at the back a little bit differently. And then when we come into the back view here, you can see that hourglass shape starting to show up where I've indicated. So you can see how having the gluteus region in there would make this a little bit easier to see. But I think that gives me a good indication of the shape, form, and placement. So now it's a matter of kind of refining this a little bit better and getting this to look nice. Yeah, there we go. So I'm going to come back in with the clay buildup here. We'll come to 6 and just kind of observe how this comes from under the latissimus dorsi here, and it kind of wraps forward at sort of this almost angular setup here. It has a bit of a curve to it here, a nice little appealing slope as it runs next to the abs, and this creates kind of a furrow between the muscle and the thoracic arch, so it kind of ramps into this area a little bit. So I don't know if you can see that well. It's one of those muscles that, like, if you're a sculptor, it's like you just run your finger across this area and it just naturally flows, if that makes sense. Now, one thing I'm not liking is the relationship the serratus muscle is having to this. I feel like I probably should have waited on the serratus muscle to put it on top of here, but I'm just going to bulk up the serratus to see if I can't get this to interact a little bit better, because the serratus shouldn't be cutting into the surface, it should be sitting on top of it. So I'm just adding a bit of volume here to get that bulked and looking a little bit nicer in there, and then I'll just come in here with the external oblique and fill that in a bit more. I think in this area I'm getting a little bit too rounded, and we want to maintain the flat aspect of the chest there. I think that came from me using the move tool when I did to broaden the thoracic arch a bit better. That's okay. I can come down here to a really low level with the H polish and just kind of get this to be more flat again. And that's at like level 3 I did that. And then I might even do the same thing here a little bit. So that way we're just maintaining the flatter aspect of the torso. And then just work back in the muscle details that we have here for these areas. And a lot of these muscles are very, very flat. So that's why the H polish actually comes out to be one of our best friends in this scenario. I'm not liking what happened to the arms there, though. Let me backpedal here and see where that happened. I'm fairly sure it happened when I moved the upper region. It's one of the nice things about the history aspect of ZBrush is it makes it very easy to figure out where you went wrong. But sometimes it is unfortunate because had we just not done something, we'd be better off. Okay, so I'm going to detail this back up here. I think I'm just going to approach this differently. Rather than using the move brush here, I'm going to use the clay buildup on the serratus area. because I don't think I really needed to move it. I think I just needed to get the thoracic region looking better than I had it. I didn't quite make it ribcagey enough coming off of here. And I think that's one of the issues that I'm running into. So I'm just going to redo this region quickly here. But, you know, this is part of the process, kind of just the back and forth as you're laying these in here. You might notice, hey, this region's just not quite looking right. And yeah, you might just be right with it. Because, yeah, you may have made something a little bit off here. So here I'm just kind of nudging back in the serratus detail. And I may need to turn off my coloration to get a better read on that, because that doesn't quite feel right anymore. But it should give us a start. So I'm just going to come in here at the higher subdivision level. I'm carving with my dam standard now to get these back in here as they relate to the serratus muscle. And remember that the paint job is not the main muscle. It's just there to help differentiate it from the surrounding area for you guys to see. But that should do an okay job there in that region. And then I can spend a little bit more time in here coming in and getting this detail back in that we lost in the undue state of this kind of draping off the rib cage. I say draping because that's kind of what it does. It drapes a bit and creates this nice little curved area here. I'm just kind of emphasizing the thoracic arch again there. And latissimus dorsi. Okay, so that's looking a bit better. Let me turn off those arms and just kind of double check back here. Maybe get a little bit more weight going to this here. So it's sitting a little bit more boldly on top of the pelvis. And there we go. I think I've combated this into something that I like and can appreciate. Okay, so let's double check our form with our reference now. And I'll go ahead and make this a bit better seen on our screen. Square this up to the landmarks that we can match to, and just double check some of the things now that we are seeing here. Okay, so let me use my see-through here. That's matching fairly closely, but there's a little bit more of a tuck to it on the side here that I'm missing. My rib cage is a little bit too strong, so I'm going to use the move brush here to kind of nudge this up and in and do this at a lower level. I'm going to start at subdivision 3 here and then maybe bump to 4 just to see if that holds up okay. Not quite. So just kind of nudging those in place a little bit better. I think that's looking a bit closer. Let's get into where we can see the detail a bit more. And I think in terms of detailing, we're doing okay. The serratus are sitting a little bit further back than I might want there. But I think that's kind of arbitrary. I could bring these forward a bit more using the move brush. And then we could check this from something like the side view. Even though the arms are there on the side view, so I don't think we're gonna get too much here. Just square that up. And I'll need to bring back everything to see this again. So one thing I'm noticing is the angle of the back there. Mine's a bit steeper, which I'm okay with. Let's check the line. I guess we can't really see the line there for where the latissimus dorsi is going. But we could bring that out a little bit more. I'm actually not opposed to leaving it where it's at, but it probably should have a little bit more volume there. And then we can check the backside, which at this point should be pretty good. Nice thing is we can do that full body, so we don't need to isolate that so much. Just kind of double check our measurements and how everything is looking here. And I might need to tidy up the latissimus dorsi, it looks like, which is good. When it comes to the external oblique, I think the gluteus region there is kind of making it hard to see because we've bulked that in the final version, but not in this one. But I can get that backside latissimus dorsi to read better there, in which case the external oblique looks like it's matching up pretty good. Just needs the gluteus muscles to kind of fill in. All right, so that was quite a muscle to get in there. Let's go ahead and give this some coloration here so we can separate it out and maybe just revisit some of the forms at a higher level really quick here, just to kind of see if we are liking what we're seeing. And I'd say overall, I am liking what I'm seeing here. There are some things to kind of point out before we move forward that might interest you on a higher level of detailing. So all the way up here on 7. The serratus muscle does serrate with this, so we actually sometimes do see lines kind of coming out of here towards this area. And I find this tends to be more visible on very fit females than males, which is kind of weird. But a lot of the times you can actually see those lines coming out of the serratus muscle from that region. And not a lot of the times, it's actually really rare. But that's something to just kind of be aware of that relationship between those. I'm going to use the dam standard to just get that to be a bit more visible for you guys so you're aware, but it's not really something that's needed. But that will give us a little bit more volume there. So I have to tile that back. I'm using Alt here to just kind of remove some of that area. And then, yeah. Okay, I need to move forward because I will be here all day if you let me. But yeah, so let's go ahead and color that. Let's go to RGB. We'll make this one more of a blue color since the surrounding areas are blue and purple. And we'll just come in here and color in that serratus region. Let me make it a more of a blue, less of a purple blue. There we go. And this will be the external oblique. And remember, you can always use C to sample a color that's already on your model. So if you want to clean up any of these areas afterwards, you can do that pretty quickly. If you are coloring yours, you do not need to color yours. Just remember that. There's absolutely no reason you need to add the color, and you might be better off not adding the color. I'm just doing it for visual purposes so you guys can see the individual muscle groups as we go and how they relate to one another. And I might actually end up doing a cleanup pass afterwards where I remove the color and just clean up the form. Now, you'll notice the external oblique kind of bleeds into where the linea alba is at in terms of muscles. If we wanted to get the linea alba, since it's called the white line, we could appropriately make it a white line, and that would be running along here on the rib cage. So that would be where we would see the linea alba, and basically runs up into here. So if you wanted to include that, you could. I think it looks a little bit silly with it, so I'm just going to leave the muscle groups so we can see that better. But there you go. Now, what's wild is that took quite a bit of time, and that was only a handful of muscles, but it does go a long ways in terms of depicting the front of the torso. Let me go ahead and save, and we'll go ahead and review these muscle groups really quick. So the muscles that we have on the front of the torso are going to be the pectoralis muscle, the rectus abdominis, or the abs, the serratus, I'm not exactly sure on the spelling there. I'm just going to put serratus for now. Best guess. And then finally, the external oblique. All right, so that is going to conclude the torso muscles. You want to do a look over your torso at this point and see if there's anything that needs bulking or adjustment. For some reason, I feel like my pectoralis muscles are kind of lacking from the front, but I think it's just that added fat that's confusing me, and we'll get that towards the end when we do our fat study. But that will finish our muscles of the torso. So the last thing we're going to want to do, because we're going to move to a new body group now, is we're going to come in here to our layer. Just make sure your torso study is named. Then we'll move forward and we'll start doing another muscle group. Okay? So as a challenge, what I want you to do is finish the muscle study of the torso and do your best to try and get the form and shape looking good, get all the muscle groups in there, and get your structure looking nice. So go ahead and give that a shot, and then we will continue our study.